The name causes a lot of concern off the bat, and not something I would want my kids to be involved with.
This fall, Jonathan Lee's 5-year-old son's elementary school could serve as the new meeting place of the after-school Satan Club. The national group Satanic Temple is working hard to launch a new after-school program.
Satan to us is a literary metaphor for a ultimate rebel against the ultimate tyrannical force.
The head of the Utah chapter of Satanic Temple says the group isn't about promoting or worshiping the devil.
We're providing all these activities that are teaching kids the fundamentals of what we believe.
Despite the eerie music, ambient chanting, and spiders crawling across the screen of the promotional video for the club, the group says their focus will be on scientific understanding and reasoning. Which holds their meetings in public schools. She says their fight is for separation of church and state.
We are not trying to make this about Christians against Satanists.
But still, some parents are concerned about it coming to Utah schools.
Story here at 4, facing a judge charges in the tragic drowning of a 3-month-old boy.
That little boy, Sean Flowers, did not survive despite efforts by those who tried to save him in a pond just north of 76th and Brown Deer Roads. It all happened on Saturday.
Yeah, the man who's charged this afternoon has the same name as the victim, his young son, Sean Flowers. Now, according to a criminal complaint, the 25-year-old Flowers was at a family party in an apartment near the Northridge Lakes Pond when a criminal complaint says he got angry for some reason with the baby's mother. He grabbed the child. A crowd tried to stop him. The complaint says that Flowers took the baby into the pond and held him under the water. A witness tried to swim in and grab the baby, and that witness said Flowers told him, quote, "Abraham killed his son Isaac. Jesus would forgive me."
Vice President Joe Biden can now add wedding officiant to his resume. Biden married a same-sex couple, both White House staffers, on Monday. He tweeted, "Proud to marry Brian and Joe at my house. Couldn't be happier. 2 longtime White House staffers, 2 great guys." According to media reports, it was Biden's first time officiating a wedding. Biden officiating a same-sex wedding shouldn't be surprising.
What this is all about is a simple proposition. Who do you love? I am absolutely comfortable with the fact that men marrying men, women marrying women, and heterosexual men and women marrying men all are entitled to the same exact rights.
Biden made that statement in 2012 as the re-election campaign was ramping up. At the time, President Barack Obama hadn't endorsed same-sex marriage, but he did support civil unions. Unnamed sources told Politico that moment forced the administration's hand in supporting gay marriage.
I think same-sex couples should be able to get married.
No word if Biden will continue officiating weddings when he leaves office in January. CNN reports he was only temporarily certified to marry the staffers.
Well, it looks like radical terrorists are now calling for mayhem at the Rio Olympic Games. This story comes to us courtesy of Simon Romero over the New York Times reports that they're worried about possible terrorist attacks at the Olympics in Rio de Janeiro. That is, of course, they state that Brazil's government is working closely with American law enforcement and intelligence services to identify threats and thwart potential disasters at the Games. They state here, despite its notorious battles with violent crime, Brazil has largely been spared the kind of brazen terror attacks that have rattled much of the world in recent years. They state that Brazilian officials have long been playing down the nation's vulnerability to homegrown extremism, but now they say jihadists are calling for mayhem at the Olympics, building on a wave of killings in Europe.
The leader of Egypt's Coptic Church says Christians are facing increased attacks and violent persecution. Pope Tawadros II said in a recent meeting with lawmakers there has been an attack on Christians nearly every month since 2013. Christians are particularly vulnerable in Egypt, making up only 10% of the population. A Muslim mob recently attacked and torched Christian homes over a rumor that they were building a church In May, an elderly Christian woman was stripped, beaten, and dragged through the streets.
We are the Christians of Egypt! We are the Christians of Egypt! Stop killing Christians in Egypt! US, wake up! US, wake up!
And we are a persecuted minority, so we're seeking for protections. We're seeking for law against discrimination, law to protect the minority, religious minorities in Egypt. But we are not, there is nothing in Egypt. We are persecuted daily persecution.
Stop kidnapping our girls in Egypt!
Donald Trump hitting Hillary Clinton on refugees. This, as we're hearing, 8,000 Syrians living in the United States have been granted temporary amnesty by Homeland Security to Republican Congressman Ron DeSantis. Congressman, you say this is a very dangerous idea.
Well, good afternoon, Charles. Yeah, it's interesting. The TPS designation that was put down by Jay Johnson actually applies to people who came illegally from Syria yesterday, and it's not just the people who had been here. And so we're already having basically an impossible task of trying to vet the refugees who are going through the legal process. Someone that just shows up illegally last week, we have no idea where that individual is from, and you really can't check any of their background. So this does present a threat to the security of the country.
You know, and I know you can't explain their thinking, but I think I read an 18-month extension, whether they're, to your point here, illegally or not. And you got to wonder what drives this. Is it an ideological thing? Do they say anything in the press releases to try to justify this?
I think it is mostly ideological. You know, part of it is our country has been a refuge for people coming, and I think rightfully so in many instances. But all we have to do is look to see what's happened in Europe, where you've had a mass migration and you've had a lot of problems that have developed as a result of that, because, as the minister from Lebanon said, he thinks it's at least 2 or 3% of the refugee flow are actually affiliated with the Islamic State or with al-Qaeda-like groups. So that is a major, major threat to Western societies when you're importing people, even though many of them probably are mean no harm. Even if it's a small percentage, that small percentage can do a lot of damage.
As the debate about gun control rages on in the United States, Apple has placed itself firmly on one side of the issue. The company has removed the revolver emoji from its recently released iOS 10 Beta 4. It has been replaced with a green squirt gun water pistol. And while the pro-gun community is upset with the change, Fortune says the switch is to take the edge off a lot of messages that are intended to appear threatening. Microsoft also recently made a change, changing its gun emoji to a sci-fi laser pistol. The change is set to affect all iOS devices once iOS 10 is released in the fall.
Tech giant Samsung Electronics has unveiled the Galaxy Note 7 in New York. Featuring iris scanners for easy and secure login, Samsung hopes the device will maintain the company's momentum in premium smartphone sales. It hits shelves around the world later this month.
Samsung believes its latest smart device will set a new bar in the ever-competitive industry. In New York Tuesday, Samsung Electronics unveiled its Galaxy Note 7 phablet, which is short for phone plus tablet. The head of Samsung's mobile division says the Note 7 is the market's most intelligent smartphone.
Privacy and security is a growing concern. So, we are introducing iris scanning to protect your information.
Samsung says iris scanning allows the user to unlock their phone and even engage in mobile banking without the hassle of user verification just by looking into their phone for 1 second.
Iris scanner as a future thing in the movies, but now you can do it, and I think that is amazing.
And the fingerprint now, I use it all the time, but the enhanced security is always great to have.
So Japan is among the most earthquake-prone countries in the world. And you know what? It also has the best early warning system for earthquakes as well. They've got monitors set up in the ocean all along the coastline to identify those earthquakes. And then, of course, TV and radio channels interrupt programming, and they can notify the public that it's going on so they can get to higher ground in case there's a tsunami. Well, here's the deal. There's also an app on phones that can notify people about this stuff. But on Monday, they jumped the gun. They made a mistake. They sent out a warning, and then they had to revoke it a couple seconds later, but that was way too late for the app. You guys know how these things work nowadays. Everything is so fast. It sent out a warning to people across the country, and it warned about an earthquake with the same magnitude as the really bad one that hit back in 2011. So, as you might imagine, this caused some problems. Trains around the country were all grounded to a halt. People started to panic, but of course, it was a false alarm. Now, experts are saying the earthquake signal might have been triggered by lightning.
The Ipswich couple has been left stunned by the sudden appearance of a huge sinkhole in their backyard, which keeps growing by the hour.
Ray and Lynn McKay have been told a century-old shaft could swallow a huge slice of their property and they'll need to bed down somewhere else tonight.
From average suburban backyard to a water view no one saw coming and getting bigger by the moment.
The neighbour, he'd been out watering his tomatoes and he said, you know, you got a hole in your backyard? I said, no.
Ray and Lynn McKay have called their property at Basin Pocket in Ipswich home for about 20 years, oblivious that the earth would suddenly be moving for them in such dramatic fashion.
It was a vertical trial shaft, so it was an exploratory shaft to look for coal, basically.
Initial assessment by the experts suggests the shaft could be over 60 metres deep and over 100 years old. And when they didn't find any coal, it was filled in with whatever was handy.
It would have settled and settled and settled, and for some reason it stabilised for a while, and suddenly it's gone again.
I suppose it's a fact of life, whichever way you look at it. Not a good one.
Dramatic new video shows people gasping for air in Syria after activists claim a chopper dropped barrels of toxic gas on a town in Idlib province. Witnesses say that it smelled like chlorine and dozens of people are reportedly struggling to breathe, mostly women and children. This comes just a day after a Russian plane was shot down in the same area. Ever since the Syrian civil war started in 2011, there have been reports of the Syrian government using chemical weapons. The U.S. State Department is also now investigating the reports.
And this comes as the Syrian city of Aleppo deals with a growing humanitarian crisis. At least 30 people were killed in the latest round of fighting and airstrikes. Reports say several children died as well as other civilians. And you can see in this video the damage and destruction from the shelling. Rebel forces and government troops continue to clash in the city. 300,000 civilians are still there. The UN has called it the largest area where people are trapped in war-torn Syria.
Our top story this afternoon, North Korea has fired 2 ballistic missiles into the East Sea. This latest launch comes a matter of weeks after the regime lobbed 3 missiles, 2 Nodon class and 1 Scud, into the same general area.
South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff announced earlier today that North Korea fired 1 ballistic missile from Hwanghae-namdo province in the southwestern part of the country into the East Sea. Now, the launch time was 7:50 a.m. South Korea time, but the U.S. Strategic Command said North Korea had fired off 2 missiles, but that one of them exploded soon after the launch. Now, South Korean military sources say that both missiles are presumed to be Nodon missiles, and that one of them flew around 1,000 kilometers. Now, they're still looking into the matter. Now, South Korea's defense ministry is on high alert for more missile launches, as the regime has a track record of firing a series of missiles on the same day. Now, this latest launch is being seen as an armed protest against the upcoming deployment to South Korea of the U.S. missile defense system, THAAD. Now, many experts believe North Korea will continue to launch ballistic missiles this month, as a large-scale South Korea-U.S. war game called Ulchi Freedom Guardian is scheduled for the middle of the month. Now, since Kim Jong-un took power in late 2011, North Korea has launched over 32 ballistic missiles, including submarine-launched and mid-range Musan missiles.
The Japanese government has approved a defense white paper presenting changes to its defense policy. The Xinhua news agency accuses the document of smearing China's normal maritime activities to justify Japan's own militarization. The white paper covers Japan's ever-rising military spending, its enforcement of the new National Defense Program guidelines, and its efforts to promote arms sales. The 480-page paper devotes some 30 pages to China's national defense and to China's activities in the East China Sea and the South China Sea. Critics say that by playing up what's alleged as a China threat, the Japanese government is attempting to justify its own militarization and its amendment to its post-war pacifist constitution.
China's Navy has held a massive live fire drill in the East China Sea amid heightened maritime tensions in the region. Chinese Defense Ministry said in a statement that the aim of the drills is to improve, quote, the intensity, precision, stability, and speed of its forces. The exercises, which began on Monday, involve firing dozens of missiles and torpedoes. The development comes at a time of increased tensions in East Asia after an international arbitration tribunal last month rejected Chinese territorial claims to the South China Sea. Beijing has dismissed the ruling as invalid.
Russia's Deputy Prime Minister Dmitry Rogozin says Russia's new Bore-class nuclear-powered submarines are capable of penetrating any missile defense system. Rogozin made the statement during Russian Naval Day celebrations. He added that the Bulava ballistic missiles on board the submarines are equipped with 6 to 10 high supersonic warheads that can overcome any defenses. The submarines are also smaller and quieter than their predecessors, making them harder to detect.